then he's gone. But Jim Nagy made a bold claim about John Matir, comparing him to an MVP. Let's discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, congrats to the Oklahoma City Thunder making the NBA. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk. The NBA Finals.
Yes, sir.
After beating the Minnesota Timberwolves on Thursday night. What was the atmosphere like? You were at that game.
Oh, it was ridiculous. I'm still, running off adrenaline right now. Shout out to our guy, Rylan Styles, over there at Locked On Thunder. Go listen to him. He lost his mind as well on his show right afterwards because, hey, we're going back to the finals for the first time in 13 years. So the drought is done. We're in there. And, yeah, shout out to FanDuel. That minus 8.5 they had for the Thunder yesterday. Cha-ching. Moneyball.
Yeah. So after the game, Jim Nagy, posted a quote from Mark Dageneau after the game. He said, "These guys are uncommon. They do everything right. They're professional. They're high character. They're competitive. And most of all, they're team first. They embody everything it means to be a team." And he said, "This is the blueprint for Oklahoma football." And then Realistic OU fan responded on Twitter saying, "It also helps to have the league MVP." Jim Nagy said very plainly, "We have John Matir."
John, is it a shock that a guy that, scouts kids for NFL talent in preparation for the Senior Bowl to head them to the NFL draft looks at the quarterback at the team that he now works for and says, "Yep, we got a good one here"? I'm not surprised because it's funny that the one thing, if you recognize this, a lot of people didn't see this, and this is no shade to anybody on the roster today. I'm just pointing out something factual. Jim Nagy got in here, took this job, and what was his biggest pickup like literally right after he got here? It was a player that he was raving about for a couple years and one that he actually expected to potentially be in the Senior Bowl. It's Jay Knott. Mm-hmm. Our running back room was a little bit on the struggle bus. And it was more so because we got a lot of young players, dealt with a lot of injuries, a lot of shuffling. But the first big thing he came in and did was like, we probably need to add a veteran. 1-year dude, rental, that's put up some numbers, get him in here. We can produce, and the young guys can continue to develop like we need them to. He assessed the roster and recognized now we need a running back. He didn't say that about quarterback. He saw the quarterback that we have, and he said, I think we're good. I think we're good. I think we got him. I think we got Hawkins. We need to add somebody behind him, with a little bit of experience, just so that we have the extra body just in case. And boom, you did that. I think that he is saying here that John Matir could potentially be like MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and be one of the top dudes. John, I did a video recently about how John Matir could be in the MVP conversation over on my channel, Unfair Sports. And I got a lot of flack for it. People were like, "Hey, there's ways to the game to play." Blah, 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 blah. It's offseason, people. We're looking at the potential and what's there. And John, is there anything that sounds ridiculous about John Matir potentially being a Heisman candidate if he shows out in that Michigan game?
Oh, not at all. There's nothing ridiculous about.
So, verdict is done.
Oklahoma, your Heisman you, your quarterback you, the expectations are relatively low for Oklahoma. So if Oklahoma goes and they're flirting with 10 wins this season and John Matir puts up big numbers, then he's going to be in the Heisman conversation 100%, especially in a year like this when a lot of it is based on projection. Outside of Garrett Nussmeier, a lot of the guys that are going to be Heisman consideration are a lot of it based on projection. Now you have the Jeremiah Smiths and the Jeremiah Love up there at Notre Dame, Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. Ryan Williams is going to be in the discussion as well at Alabama. But outside of that, all those veteran quarterbacks that were a part of the Heisman race last year are gone. And so you're going to have a pretty wide open race outside of Nussmeier and Arch that'll be in the conversation as long as they produce and those teams win games. But if Oklahoma wins a bunch of games and they get to November and they're sitting at something like 8-1 or 7-1 going into the final 4 games of the season, he's very much going to be in the Heisman discussion because he'll be a big reason why Oklahoma's had so much success. And so comparing him to, and even just not winning trophies, not winning awards, but if you're saying that John Matir is right now the MVP of this team, it's hard to disagree with that even before he plays games, because it seems like it's restored the confidence that people have in Oklahoma football. From a local to a national perspective, one player, and maybe the offensive coordinators had something to do with this as well, but getting John Matir here has kind of flipped the narrative a little bit about Oklahoma. Now it's a matter of, well, dang, that schedule's so tough. Will they win enough games? The talent is not in dispute on this roster. Now it's just more about, can they navigate what's going to be a brutal schedule? But if you're telling me that John Matir is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'm sure Jim Nagy is talking not just from a talent perspective, but just from a what they mean as a teammate, as a person, as a leader as well, I'm here for it, man. Because everybody's raved about who John Matir has been for this program for the last 5-6 months since he arrived in Norman.
He's been the talk of the town. He's been and rightfully so, he's a quarterback. That's exactly the person that you should be talking up and speaking up about, especially when you had mediocre quarterback play last year. You had very young quarterbacks trying to figure it out on the spot with everything around them falling apart. So not too much fault to them. It's just the circumstance was not very good. So of course, at a school that had 2 players win the Heisman back-to-back at quarterback and a third dude that was like number 2 in Heisman votes and only lost out because the guy in front of him was like having an absurdly good season. I mean, Hurts, 4,000 yards and 1,200 yards rushing. I mean, typically that's Heisman numbers.
That's winning a Heisman any other year.
Any other year, he wins the Heisman. That's 3 in a row. But unfortunately, things happen. But
Joe Burrow just decided to get historic on us.
He decided to go Super Saiyan on everybody, and it was not fair. Actually, he went level 2. But that's another discussion for another day. Your quarterback is the most critical component of your success, especially in college football, especially in the SEC. Actually, just in football in general. It's a rarity that you can go out and win. I mean, we did see that for 2 years in theory with Georgia, where they were able to win championships, quote unquote, despite their quarterback. It's no shade to Stetson Bennett. I think he was a really good quarterback, but he was walk-on twice for a reason. And so, but he went out there and showed out. But the thing for him was his confidence levels could be completely raised because his defense was forging him in fire. He was learning from the defense. He had the best defense in college football, and he basically understood, okay, this is the things I need to adjust because my defense is so good. Other teams are probably not going to see it the same way they do. John Matir is playing against one of the top defenses in college football. Argue with your mama about that. Please show me how the numbers don't show you that component. We know that Oklahoma has one of the best defenses in college football. That, to me, is a fact. And you do lose a drill sergeant there with Danny Stutzman, who was one of your major leaders, and a Billy Bowman, but they taught the guys behind them very well. And I think you're going to see an uprising from them to where they can fill those shoes, and with an offense that won't force them to play all the time, may actually make the defense better. Just remember, I've quoted this numerous times. The defense should be better statistically this year than last year because of the offense, John. So, with all of that together, there's a reason why you're going to be talking quarterback like crazy. If this dude shows up, like I said, Michigan game is the one. He shows up, and our defense shows up with him, all you're going to hear is about Oklahoma. And at that point, I do want to hear about Oklahoma. But right now, just let us be the ones that sell the hopium.
That's right. That's right. We're going to fly under the radar nationally, please, and locally we'll get this figured out.
Exactly.
Who's not flying under the radar nationally? That's the SEC, because there's a lot of discussion about should SEC move to 9 conference games? What's the college football playoff format going to look like? Well, Brian Kelly of LSU made a big statement down there in Destin, Florida. We're going to discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.